On this day after Christmas edition of Locked On Grizzlies, all I want for Christmas is a healthy Marcus Smart. Doesn't fit perfectly. I know my voice is beautiful. Plus, Ja and Jaren both sharing the blame, claiming the blame for the Grizzlies' loss against the Clippers earlier this week. And we're going to preview Grizzlies-Raptors. All that and more. No more singing, I promise, on this post-Christmas edition of Locked On Grizzlies. Let's lock in.
You are Locked On Grizzlies, your daily Memphis Grizzlies podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Happy Thursday to you and yours. It is I, Joe Mullinax, your host for this episode of Locked On Grizzlies. No DeMichael Cole this time out. He is enjoying the extended time with family and friends. DeMichael will take you solo on our Friday edition of the show tomorrow into the weekend. That'll be the plan. Me, Joe Mullinax, solo with you today. DeMichael Cole solo with you on Friday, and then it's the weekend. Today's episode of Locked On Grizzlies is brought to you by the good folks over at Game Time. I love Game Time, and you should as well. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. We are free and available wherever you get podcasts as proud members of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team each and every single day. Like, comment, rate, review, subscribe, Apple, Spotify, Amazon, YouTube. Literally anywhere you get a podcast, you can get Locked On Grizzlies, and we are happy to have you with us each and every time that an episode drops. Also, friendly reminder that we do have a free daily newsletter. The newsletter is on a bit of a brief break this week. No newsletter today, so if you're a subscriber already, no newsletter in your inbox coming today, but you will get one on Friday, written words from me, NBA coverage at large, fantasy basketball stuff, all sorts of good content over at LockedOnDaily.com. Find the Locked On Grizzlies tab and subscribe to our free daily newsletter. What a holiday Christmas is, right? And spending time with family, everybody that celebrates Christmas. Happy Boxing Day, by the way, to those in Canada that celebrate that. But Christmas was yesterday, and it was a lot of fun. Had a great time with my family, my wife, my kids, my in-laws. Just a beautiful day. And you listen to a lot of Christmas music, right? That's one of the positives. And Christmas is still kind of going on, right? The 12 days of Christmas. We're in that groove still the holiday season. And, Mariah Carey's All I Want for Christmas, Is You comes on. All I Want for Christmas is My Two Front Teeth, right? That's another, maybe that's the tune I should have gone. All I want for Christmas is a healthy Marcus Smart. That's definitely what I should have done. Sorry about that. Although I did do a good Mariah impression earlier, so I don't regret it. But the beat of All I Want for Christmas is My Two Front Teeth maybe fits my vibe sitting here chatting with you today, talking Memphis Grizzlies basketball on Locked On Grizzlies, because Marcus Smart is once again out for tonight's contest against the Raptors. We'll talk more about that later on in the show, the game itself. But Marcus Smart being out again, this time it's a right index finger injury that is keeping me out. He hurt the finger back in Atlanta last weekend, if I do recall correctly. All I want to see is whether or not Marcus Smart actually works with this Grizzlies team. Because in the limited sample size that we have, dating back to last season and then this season, there's flashes of good and there's flashes of not so good. There are things that Marcus Smart brings to the table in terms of leadership and tangibles that you don't physically see that are extremely valuable. And then there are things that he does on the court that remind you, if you're a Grizzlies fan of a certain age like myself, of one Tony Allen, the trick-or-treat aspect of TA, the good with the bad, double-edged sword, however you want to describe Marcus Smart. That is very much his game. That is the vibe that he gives off as a basketball player. And the numbers back that up this season. He has really done some impressive things for the Grizzlies this year. He has been a better offensive facilitator than I expected him to be. According to Cleaning the Glass, he is in the 72nd percentile in assist percentage for combo guards. That is 22%. That's an improvement from last year. And that's a good thing, because the Grizzlies certainly wanted to see an improvement there from Smart, who struggled in that area as a combo guard that played a lot more point than he probably should have last season. Of course, with Marcus Smart, former Defensive Player of the Year, where so much of his value gets checked off is on the defensive end. And that's still holding true. His steal percentage in particular, among the NBA's best when it comes to combo guards, 2.3%. That has him in the 86th percentile per Cleaning the Glass. Block percentage, 0.7%. 66th percentile. He's doing some good things as a rebounder as well, getting extra offensive possessions, 3.6% field goal offensive rebounding rate. That is 81st percentile among qualifying guards. So that is a plus for Marcus Smart. Con for Marcus Smart, he's not rebounding defensively the way that you would like to see him. That is actually at its lowest mark at 6.3% of his entire career. So he is not rebounding opponent missed shots. And that is a problem when you're trying to get out in transition with your combo guards. To compare that to guys like Desmond Bane and Ja Morant, who are routinely in the upper echelon of that area. Defensive rebounding, getting the ball, getting out in transition, initiating sets and actions more quickly on the offensive end. That is not a strength of Smart this season. Marcus Smart, also a streaky shooter, to say the least. He's doing some good things in terms of his rim finishing, right? He's above average in that area at 64% so far this season. And again, this is all cleaning the glass, cleaningtheglass.com. But again, we talk about offensive struggles. Smart is shooting his worst effective field goal percentage per cleaning the glass since the 2019-2020 season. He is at 48.6%. That is not good, only shooting a paltry 37% on his mid-range shots. Really struggling on the corner three, which is a major concern for me personally. 22% from the corner, 6 of 27 overall, 23 of 57 on non-corner threes. So he's shooting pretty well in other spaces, but he has very distinct cold spots in terms of his shooting accuracy. And that is something to be concerned about. He is a player who is supposed to impact winning. That's the main argument for him being in Memphis. But the current differential for him, efficiency-wise, per 100 possessions, points scored, minus teams allowed per 100 possessions, points scored, he is literally at a -0. He has played 380 minutes for the Memphis Grizzlies so far this season, roughly, give or take a minute. And he has not made the Grizzlies better or worse. Excuse me. He has just been there. He's getting cardio, right? Now, again, there are certain things that Memphis does better when he's out on the floor. The turnover rate goes down. That's a plus. Having the extra facilitator, the extra guy to create offense, get into those sets. That's great. The Grizzlies go to the free throw line more when Marcus Smart is on the floor. Lord knows the Grizzlies could take advantage of every offensive opportunity they could get. Opposing teams are shooting worse. 1.3 percentage points worse according to effective field goal percentage. But opposing teams are getting to the free throw line more. Opposing teams are finding ways to get out and move. And all of the positives, all of the good that Marcus Smart brings to the table gets negated, and you're back to square one. Again, almost 380 minutes played, and he is literally a 0.0 in terms of efficiency differential per cleaning the glass. So what does that tell us? In a sample size that small, not too much. So far, he has not been a contributor to the winning basketball the way that he had been in Boston, right? 2021, 2022 with the Boston Celtics, played over 2,200 minutes plus 5.9. When he was on the court for the Grizzlies last year, the Memphis Grizzlies were a plus 8.0. So that is evidence that the Grizzlies were better when Smart was on the floor. But between that and this season's smaller sample, are you confident enough to say that Marcus Smart is a guy that contributes in that reserve role? I think it's a fair question that you can make an argument either way, especially now that he's bought into coming off the bench. You want to use Marcus Smart's salary as a trade piece. I think that's logical. The Brooklyn Nets could care less if Marcus Smart plays or not, right? They literally traded for DeAnthony Melton. There's precedent there. If Marcus Smart was out for the remainder of the season, that might intrigue the Nets even more. They just want draft capital that the Grizzlies have plenty to spare of. So what would Memphis do? Do you go bring in Cam Johnson and disrupt the starting lineup? A starting lineup that's had some success? Cam Johnson's having a pretty darn good season. I think it's a question that's worth asking. Do you stick with Marcus Smart and hope that he stays healthy? And if he can't stay healthy, at least you have G.G. Jackson and Vince Williams Jr. eventually, hopefully, coming back. The rise of Jalen Wells, the ability of Jake LaRavia and Santi Aldama to compete. it makes it so that Memphis doesn't have to be desperate with regards to what they do with Marcus Smart, and that's extremely valuable. But let me know on X, let me know in the comments, at Joe Mullinax on X, how do you feel about Marcus Smart? What I want, because again, I'm usually Mr. Call Me at Christmas, right? Who are the Memphis Grizzlies, what their roster is, what kind of deal they need to make, if they need to make one at all. It has to be Martin Luther King Day, at least at this point, another few weeks, because we still don't know who these Grizzlies are. I would love for Marcus Smart to be able to come back here soon. Hopefully we get an injury data update on him pretty soon, and he either is back soon or we have a more concrete idea of what's going on. When we come back here on Locked On Grizzlies, we are going to be talking about Ja and Jaren Jackson Jr. taking the blame for the loss this past week or earlier this week against the Clippers. Who is to blame? Who is responsible for that loss? I'm going to break it down coming up next here on the podcast. Stick around. Today's episode of Locked On Grizzlies is brought to you by Game Time. I love going to see live events during the holidays. My wife and I's anniversary is coming up this weekend. We are going to definitely take advantage of the Game Time app to find a fun event to go to that we're both going to enjoy, which is very rare. Am I right, guys, gals? Anybody out there in a relationship, sometimes it's hard to find a common shared interest. My wife and I really enjoy comedy shows, and we're going to go check out one of those this weekend thanks to the Game Time app, adding another memory this holiday season. Game Time Picks does a great job curating options for you, making it easier to save more on sports, concerts, comedy, theater, and so much more. You can use all-in pricing, toggling on that feature up front, showing the total cost with no surprise fees at checkout. And they also have at Game Time the lowest price guarantee, or they will credit you 110% of the difference. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game Time. Today's episode of Locked On Grizzlies is also brought to you by Rocket Money. Did Rocket Money help you find any subscriptions you forgot about or that you were paying for twice? That's definitely happened to me. I had a few subscriptions that I didn't even realize I was still paying for, and Rocket Money makes it so easy to track them all down. It's like having a personal assistant for my finances. Rocket Money is a personal finance app that helps find and cancel your unwanted subscriptions, monitors your spending, and helps lower your bills so you can grow your savings. It brings everything together in one place: subscriptions, spending habits, goals you want to hit this coming year. Rocket Money has over 5 million users and has saved a total of $500 million in canceled subscriptions, saving members up to $740 a year when using all of the app's premium features. Cancel your unwanted subscriptions and reach your financial goals faster with Rocket Money. Go to rocketmoney.com/lockedon today. That's rocketmoney.com/lockedon. rocketmoney.com/lockedon. Go and check them out today. My co-host for this podcast is one DeMichael Cole. If you're an everydayer of Locked On Grizzlies, you are very well aware of that. DeMichael Cole is the younger one, the cooler one, the more talented one, just better in every way. And I don't say that as self-degradation. I say that as, DeMichael rocks. I'm a big fan. And DeMichael, coming out of the Clippers game, right? DeMichael coming out of the Clippers game, he wrote a game recap. He speaks with Jaren Jackson Jr., speaks with Ja Morant, and both guys tried to take the blame for the loss that Memphis suffered at the hands of the Los Angeles Clippers. Now, as we talked about with Sean Coleman on the last episode of the show, which was a great episode. Thanks everybody for the feedback, all the talking in the comments, good interactions there. Try to stay positive where you can, but even if you're feeling a little bit negative, be positive with one another at least. It's the holidays, for goodness sakes. A lot of blame to go around, right? And I think that one of the hardest players to blame in this Memphis Grizzlies franchise is Ja Morant, because Ja is so important to what the Grizzlies do. And, I'm one of the more vocal critics of Ja from time to time, and I get some criticism for that. When Ja does things well, I'm told that I don't give him enough credit. I give him the credit he deserves as the superstar of this organization, right? Like Desmond Bane might be the highest paid player, but DeMichael and I have covered that recently. The only reason that's the case is Ja had the issues that he's had over the last couple of seasons. If Ja hadn't have been suspended, if Ja had been playing and not injured, Ja would absolutely be the highest paid player on the Memphis Grizzlies because he would have the accolades that belong with him being a top 10 or 15 player in the NBA. Your top player has to do better than what Ja Morant did against the Los Angeles Clippers. 7 of 20 from the field, 7 turnovers, 4 assists, 7 turnovers, 4 assists. That's almost a 2-to-1 ratio in the opposite direction. 2 turnovers for every assist. That is 7 lost possessions. And of everybody in the starting lineup, there is only one Grizzlies player that was a minus in terms of plus minus in that Clippers-Grizzlies game, and that is one Ja Morant. So on one hand, if Ja wants to take the blame for the loss, that's a guy who I think could have played a heck of a lot better, and he has struggled recently against the LA teams, as Sean pointed out, something like 13 or 14 for 32 from the field against both the Lakers and the Clippers in the last 2 games against those teams. Then you have Jaren Jackson Jr., who is probably the Grizzlies MVP of the season to this point. I would not say he's the best player on the Grizzlies. I still think that's Ja Morant for all my criticism of him. But you might disagree with that, and that's fine. Jaren's having a heck of a year, all-NBA, all-star conversation type player. The Grizzlies are at the top of the Western Conference. Assuming they get an all-star player, it's going to be Jaren Jackson Jr., you would imagine. 9 of 26 from the field against the Los Angeles Clippers. 1 of 7 from the field in terms of 3-point shots. 5 for 9 from the charity stripe. 5 for 9, which is well below Jaren's season average. 6 rebounds, so at least he had that going for him, right? For all you that complain about his rebounding. He did that at an average level at least. 3 assists, which that's been my major knock on Jaren. If you've been an everydayer of Locked On Grizzlies, you know I want to see him facilitate for others off of double teams when people collapse on him, since he's so strong offensively now. 1 turnover, so a better assist-to-turnover ratio than Ja Morant, your starting point guard. However, where I'm comfortable with blaming Jaren Jackson Jr., 0 steals, 0 blocks. The strongest argument for Jaren Jackson Jr. being the best player on this Grizzlies team right now is his two-way action, right? The way that he can defend and score, his impact on the game on both ends of the floor. That did not happen. Against the Los Angeles Clippers. Taylor Jenkins, the head coach of the Memphis Grizzlies, made the conscious choice to play Brandon Clark less. Clark only played 7 minutes against the Clippers. Jenkins essentially trotted out a 9-man rotation of Jackson Jr., Morant, Jalen Wells, Zach Edey, Desmond Bane, Santi Aldama, Jake LaRavia, Luke Kennard, mildly surprising, and Scottie Pippen Jr. That was the rotation. Clark only played 7 minutes. So Jaren played a lot more time at the center, and Ivica Zubac dominated Jaren Jackson Jr. Zubac dominated Edey too, but Edey got better as the game went on, Zach Edey, that is. 20 points, 19 rebounds for Zubac, and a lot of that work was done against Jaren. 4 steals for Zubac, 1 block, 5 stocks, 0 stocks for Jaren. So the better two-way player going in or at the end of the night against the Clippers was Zubac. So Jaren takes that L pretty directly, in my opinion. So Jaren taking the blame, I'm cool with. But in reality, and we're talking about professional basketball here, this isn't high school, this isn't college, although college is kind of like professional now in terms of the players being compensated. The guy that makes the most money, the guys in this case, are the ones that should get the brunt of the criticism. Now, that doesn't mean, because some of you are going to say I'm being a hypocrite when it comes to Desmond Bane. Desmond Bane absolutely should be criticized. Should be criticized for what he did against the Clippers, right? He was one of the better He was the best of the big three, to say the least. 21 points, 9 rebounds, 7 assists. Not a bad night. Not a bad night at all. Could have been better, but could have been worse. Look at Ja and Jaren, right? So Dez was not anywhere near part of the problem here. I think if I'm going to divvy out blame, I appreciate both of them as leaders trying to take it. I'm going to split it right down the middle. I'm going to give half to Jaren, half to Ja. They have to be better. Give the Clippers credit. They had a good game plan, right? A way for Zubac, a way for their defense to be able to execute, having interesting rotation choices, interesting defensive matchups. Jaren Jackson Jr. having to deal with Zubac a good amount. James Harden defending whoever the 4 was on the floor because they knew those guys are more perimeter-based and maybe wouldn't try to take advantage of their size or strength advantages. The Clippers are a tough team, and they deserve credit for that win. But the Grizzlies have two stars who should have performed a heck of a lot better than they did against LA. Combined 16 of 46 shooting is not going to cut it. Combined 3 of 15 from three is not going to cut it. Combined 12 of 17 from the free throw line. They make 4 more free throws. We're talking about a tie ball game, folks. A very different vibe. So obviously 47 points between the two of them is solid, but they did it on 46 shots. Not nearly efficient enough. Jaren and Ja both need to be better going into tonight's game. And speaking of tonight's game, when we come back here on Locked On Grizzlies, we're going to close out this episode of the show previewing Grizzlies and Raptors. Toronto 1-13 on the road this season. Should be a Grizzlies win. How can they make sure that should becomes a will? We'll talk about that next here on the podcast. Stick around. Today's episode of Locked On Grizzlies is brought to you by the good folks over at Robinhood Gold. With Robinhood Gold, you don't need a silver spoon to eat up the financial favors that the 1% receive. Robinhood Gold allows others to get the rates and perks usually reserved for the high society. Now, the resourceful individual with Robinhood Gold can earn the very liberal rate of 4.25% APY on uninvested cash and be rewarded with a handsome 3% retirement boost on IRA account contributions. Robinhood Gold provides the privileges of a high net worth for any net worth. These generous benefits are now available for only $5 a month. The new gold standard is here with Robinhood Gold. Sign up at Robinhood.com/gold. Terms apply. For product-specific disclosures, visit Robinhood.com/gold. Investing involves risk. Rate may change. Gold membership is offered by Robinhood Gold, LLC. The Grizzlies take on the Raptors tonight, right? Old friend Darko coming into town. And the Raptors are really bad at basketball this season, especially away from home. The Raptors are 1-13 on the road, as I mentioned a moment ago. The Grizzlies are 13-4 at home. Memphis being a 12.5 or so point favorite going into this contest should not really be a surprise. The Raptors are literally 6-10 at home, which is much better than 1-13 on the road. So the Grizzlies have a chance to really get out in front and beat up on a Raptors team, and that matters in this context. The Grizzlies, and Sean Coleman talked about it a little bit on our last episode, the Grizzlies are about to go into a stretch that we're going to learn a lot about them as a franchise. Obviously, it's a back-to-back. The Grizzlies play the New Orleans Pelicans on Friday night. I'm sure DeMichael Cole will preview that game with you guys on tomorrow's show. Back-to-back, so Toronto and NOLA. Anytime you have a chance to play two teams that aren't as good, especially Toronto in this case, you have to build that lead so that you can get guys out and limit their minutes. Now, Memphis has not played much in the month of December, right? We've talked about that before because of the NBA Cup, all that sort of stuff. This will be their 11th game of the month, and it's December 26th. So it's not like these back-to-backs have really been that heavy for them. The last back-to-back that Memphis did play was December 7th and December 8th. That was the back-to-back on the East Coast against Boston and Washington. Obviously, the Grizzlies won both of those games, that Boston win being one of the best of the season. They have to find a way to limit the minutes in the Toronto game just in case things don't go the way that Memphis may want them to in New Orleans. Then is where the fun begins. At Oklahoma City on Sunday evening. Yes, please. Finally, we get a chance to see these Grizzlies against the Thunder. Then they go to Phoenix, Sacramento, Golden State. You're picking up what I'm putting down. The games are about to get a heck of a lot more challenging. Even with Luka Doncic's injury to his calf, the Dallas Mavericks are a good basketball team. You see them January 6th. The Houston Rockets January 9th back at home. Both of those games at home. This is the moment. This is the opportunity. They have to win these games, and they have to find ways to maximize their reps. Because if they don't, they are really going to struggle racking up other wins coming up. And the Raptors are ripe for that racking. Okay, that's really important to understand. Toronto not playing well on the road, and they have their own injury concerns to worry about. The Toronto Raptors will not have Jakob Poeltl. He is going to be out due to injury in this contest. That's a big loss for them. Again, a guy that plays a similar style to Zubac of the Clippers. No Poeltl. That's going to be helpful for the Grizzlies. Bruce Brown not playing for Toronto. That matters a lot. Bruce Brown, not going to be part of the process. And then you have Emmanuel Quickley, a guy that was part of the big trade with the Knicks a while back, not participating with the Raptors. He is out as well for this contest. So those are three guys that likely would have been in the Toronto Raptors rotation that Memphis is not going to have to face. The Grizzlies, on the other hand, we mentioned Marcus Smart earlier on in the show. They still don't have Jay Huff, still don't have Vince Williams Jr., still don't have Gigi Jackson. But those are all guys that they expected to still be without, redundant there. They didn't expect to have those guys. They still have Ja, they still have Desmond Bane, they still have Jaren Jackson Jr. That matters. This Grizzlies team should be able to beat up on a Raptors team that is on an 8-game losing streak. But they're going to have to contend with 2019 draft class mate for Ja Morant, RJ Barrett, who is having a pretty strong season for the Toronto Raptors. The fascinating thing about Barrett, though, is the home and away splits that we were talking about are especially relevant, not just for the Raptors at large, but for Barrett himself. Barrett on the road is a completely different basketball player this season than Barrett at home. Barrett at home for the Raptors is scoring over 28 points a game, 7 rebounds, 5 assists. That is a freaking MVP candidate in the 12 home games that he's logged there in Toronto. On the road this season, however, Barrett is 39.6% from the field, 14 percentage points or 12 percentage points worse than he is at home. 11 almost percentage points worse from the three-point line, 29.6. 19 points a game. He's grabbing almost 1 less rebound. His assists go up on the road. But he is not nearly the basketball player on the road that he is at home. So even the best of the Raptors in terms of their offensive weaponry, the guy RJ Barrett, who could be a tough matchup for the Grizzlies on the perimeter, it's not like that guy is really in a position to hurt them, right? That is significant. And I think that the Grizzlies, if they just play their game, right? I don't want to be lazy with my analysis here, but if they find a way to get Ja Morant going early, Desmond Bane, who has had a strong couple of games, getting him going early, they have to put the foot on the throat of this Raptors team and make it clear that they're actually not going to be in this contest. Because of the last 5 games that Toronto has lost, and obviously they've lost more than that, but of the last 5 games that Toronto has lost, only 1 of them has been, only 2 of them have been by double digits. The Knicks won by 14 in the most recent game for Toronto. And the Miami Heat won by 10 about 2 weeks ago. The Houston Rockets only beat the Raptors by 4. The Brooklyn Nets only won by 7. The Chicago Bulls won by 1 point. The 2 blowout losses were on the road, though. And that is where that difference of play between home and away continues for the Toronto Raptors. So, unfortunately, again, hate to be the bearer of good news in this case, but it's not the most analytical take. The Grizzlies just have to do their thing. Revisit the way they were against the Atlanta Hawks. Get back to that. The way they played against Brooklyn maybe is a better measure since the Raptors are a similar squad, not necessarily trying to win as many games as they can. The Grizzlies beat up on Brooklyn, but if you let Toronto hang around, if you give them hope, even with all of these guys out, these veteran players like Brown and Pirtle that could hurt the Grizzlies in their individual matchups. You've got Barrett, who's playing really well. If you can find a way to limit him, as he tends to be limited when he's on the road, if you have a way to limit Scotty Barnes, who is the guy that they're trying to build this thing around, the Grizzlies should pick this win up and build up a lead early enough that they can rest up for the second half of the back-to-back against the Pelicans on Friday. Speaking of that second half of the back-to-back, on our next edition of Locked On Grizzlies, to Michael Cole, my co-host, Memphis Grizzlies beat writer for the Commercial Appeal, he'll have you covered for that game. Plus, he'll review what happened against the Raptors, reviewing Raptors against the Grizzlies, talking about the upcoming 5-game road trip starting off on Friday with the Pelicans. I'm sure DeMichael will have you covered on all that. Make sure you're with him for the Friday edition of the podcast. I will not be with you. I'll be back on Monday. Thank you so much for being with me on this edition of the show. Like, comment, rate, review, subscribe, Apple, Spotify, Amazon, YouTube, literally anywhere you get a podcast. Become an everydayer if you haven't already done so, and join DeMichael and I each and every time that an episode drops wherever you consume NBA and Memphis Grizzlies content consumption. Also, remember the free daily newsletter. There won't be one in your inbox today, but that resumes on Friday. Make sure you're going to LockedOnDaily.com, checking out my written words on the Grizzlies each and every time that a newsletter comes out. Again, it's free. It's a daily newsletter. LockedOnDaily.com. Subscribe to the Locked On Grizzlies daily free newsletter. Thank you again 100 times over. I hope you had a wonderful holiday. I hope you have a great weekend. DeMichael will be with you on Friday. I'll catch you back on Monday here on Locked On Grizzlies. Have a great time. Be safe out there. Enjoy yourselves. And I will catch you back here next time on Locked On Grizzlies.